Hi there. I'm pre-recording this for one of our Wednesday devotionals. And so I'm not sure if you find yourself in April still or in May. And I'm not sure where you find yourself physically. Hopefully you are safe and sound. A lot of days in the past little while, my body or my brain or my heart has thought to itself, using great hyperbole, everything is terrible. It's not usually terrible, it's not always the word I use. Sometimes I say everything is different, or everything is changed, everything is harder, everything is easier. So imagine my surprise when I got a book referral. A good friend and clergy coach of mine said, "You need to read Everything Isn't Terrible." Curious, I looked into it, and it ends up that Kathleen Smith has written a wonderful book taking apart a theory and that psychologists and that some of us ministers use, a framework for how we see one another and how we are in relationship, and most importantly, how we seek to grow and mature as people of God. Kathleen Smith has taken this theory and her work with it in the secular world and has broken it up into very good sized bits with assignments and homeworks, which many of you know I love. As I've been reading it, I have been contemplating Job. Job is someone for whom everything really was terrible. Job's story of being a good, solid citizen with a large family and a large home business, farming, takes a dear and dire turn due to a bet going on in amongst the gods. The bet is, could Job stay faithful to his God if he wasn't so successful, so spiritual, so rich in family, friends, and assets? Now you may be wondering why there is many gods in heaven sitting at a council table making these kind of bets. And in particular, why is that in our Hebrew scriptures? Isn't our Hebrew scriptures about how God is one? Well, Job is one of those books in the Bible with that mysterious twist. It is a book that has found its way into our sacred library, even though it doesn't begin like a traditional biblical story. Most biblical stories begin with, once upon a time, there was a woman, there was a man, there was a child, there was a saint, a sinner. And this is how they interacted with God. But there are a few stories in our Bible that begin differently. In this case, once upon a time, there was a bet in heaven that the only reason people really loved their God was if they were blessed with measurable happiness, success, friends, family, connections. As we begin to get to know Job, some of the people in his life he considered friends, and hear his conversation with God, we begin to realize why it is in our Bible. It is a wrestling with one of the great questions of life and faith. Why do bad things happen to good people? Is everything truly always terrible? And how do we decide if something is or not? And how do we decide whose fault it is? The book of Job is part of the library of our Bible. And it would be, if the library was in a bookstore, in the genre called wisdom writings. It, along with Proverbs, Psalms, these are our writings, our poetry, to help us wrestle with great wisdom. They are often attributed to a time in the history of Israel where people had some level of comfort. Solomon was ruling and there was enough. They were not being oppressed. Life was pretty comfortable for many of them, which allowed them to ponder. Free time allows us to ponder in a way that busy time or hard times do not. And in this pandemic, I'm finding that while some people have found themselves in a situation that is much, much busier than normal, others have found themselves having leisure time, time to meditate, create, get bored. I don't want you to think that this time is a time to become more successful or to pick up a new hobby, to become a better version of yourself, because this time is different than normal free time, even if you have more free time. Though, of course, for many, many folks, the majority of folks, this has been a more busy time, a busier household with the children not going to school, a busier workload where going into work means adding protective layers to our physical and even perhaps our spiritual beings. Working from home for many people just means working with more distractions than normal, not less. And being in communications with others in a way that has technology at its base. This is quite a difference for us. We are used to being able to see a whole person, but that's not how we're interacting with each other right now. Have you been finding yourself responding differently to people? Maybe taking on more anxiety, feeling more fear, feeling just more of whatever emotion is with you. Well, I'm going to give you some tips from Kathleen Smith, from Job, about how to navigate some of this. First thing to note is that nothing, no self-help book, not even the Bible, allows for easy answers, allows us to take in and change our lives for the better. Instead, good resources of wisdom ask us to notice our lives, to observe our habits, to reflect on what they mean for us, and evaluate if they're working for us. And then to perhaps, if we so choose, to interrupt them, to interrupt our reactions and responses, and change, slow, reevaluate, and see if we want to be different, want to respond to the world differently. And so Kathleen Smith begins with, I hope you are willing to get uncomfortable and do some work. Not so that you can perfect how to be human, but so that you can be free to make decisions, choices, and live in the framework of being your true self. Not living for others or under others' definitions, but living under your faithful tradition and yourself. And so she says, in every step you take in life, observe, evaluate, and interrupt your automatic, your automatic habit, your automatic thought process, anything that is reacting without those steps of observance and thinking and evaluating how we want to engage in whatever it is. This will make you uncomfortable, as it makes me uncomfortable. The first piece of homework I'm going to give you isn't even going to be to change a habit. It's going to be to write stuff down. Only the observe part, though. So I want you to find a paper. It can be kind of pretty. It can be a scrap piece of paper. Can be coffee stained. And at the end of this time together, I'm going to come up with a way to ask you, to invite you to note, to make note. When in the next 24 hours or 24 days, whatever works for you, when is it that you find yourself feeling anxious? Anxiety is often a mix of emotions. There's usually some fear, discomfort, and it is uncomfortable enough that our first instinct is to get rid of it, to solve a problem, fix something, or comfort ourselves or others in a way that gets rid of it. And those are the notes we're making. When does that kind of feeling arise for you? And what do you normally do with it? Now, anxiety comes out of a very good human instinct to stay safe, survive. And so that's why it is discomforting and gives us some energy to get rid of it. It's literally supposed to get us up and running if an enemy comes in. From our old days where our enemies were weather, wild animals, starvation, death. So here is what is naturally programmed into our body. Anxiety is a response. It happens when we are truly threatened or we imagine we are threatened. When there is truly a car coming really fast towards us, or when we're walking down the street and we hear a car turn a corner and we imagine it's closer than it is. My body reacts the same. It's only after that I can say, oh, the first time I was actually in danger, I'm glad I responded and reacted. The other one will be what I did yesterday, which was, oh, there wasn't any car near me, and I jumped anyways. Imagined threats are important for human survival. It's what distinguishes us. We can actually plan ahead on a trip, for example, and say, oh, that's going to take at least 2 days. We need to pack food. The imagined threat that's going to be in the future helps us to plan for that. Good stuff. However, sometimes what we imagine is truly only in our imagination. Anyway, so you've got that feeling. You're anxious. There's fear, discomfort, and a worry about survival and safety. Your body is trained and programmed to do one of 3 things. And Kathleen Smith has added a 4th that I like, that is, I think, probably new in human evolution since we've had a bit more security. So, first 3, I think you probably know. You are either going to freeze. This is what happens when I walk past a bunny in the RW parking lot. The Robertson Westing parking lot has bunnies in it most times. And when I walk through and that bunny sees me, the bunny immediately freezes. That's because bunnies' main source of protection is camouflage. So if they don't move, They hope that they look like the snow behind them, or the gray gravel, or the brown dirt. Freezing is how they stay safe, and it is one of the ways your body may respond to anxiety. It may always be freezing. Maybe that is your go-to. However, freezing may also be something you only occasionally do. Number 2, fight. Let sleeping dogs lie comes from the fact that when dogs are startled, almost all of them, their first reaction is to fight. Partly because they're strong and powerful. Those teeth, So they might bite you before they even are half or fully awake because they are anxious. Something is unexpected and dangerous. They fight. Now, this isn't the fight you have with someone after you've thought about the fact you disagree with them, and then you go at it, and it gets a little uncontrolled and you throw things. This is the fight that happens when your body starts moving to hit back or to block, and you don't even know intellectually what is threatening you. The third, of the ones we really know well is to just flee. Get the heck away from wherever we are. This sometimes means physical. So when I heard the car and assumed it was very, very close to me, I fled. I went up to the sidewalk and I stood very still and strong, but I was off the sidewalk. Now, again, imagined the car was nowhere near me, but my fleeing would have saved me if it was close. Fleeing is what deer do. If they haven't got frozen in the headlights, they are more than likely gone. Cats are excellent fleers. The fourth one that Kathleen adds that I think is really important, and again, I don't know if humans could do this early in our evolution, but now, because a lot of us do not have threats and that are needing us to freeze, we don't have camouflage, there's a lot of threats we cannot flee from or fight. And this one is called fretting, another great F word. So we can fight or flee or freeze, or we can fret. If I fret about something, it feels like I'm protecting myself. So if I'm fretting about whether I have enough food in the fridge to last me, it's like my brain thinks if I worry about it and I'm really conscious about it, then there will be enough food. Partly because I will eat way less because I'm fretting. So of course there'll be more food. Your body does these things automatically. And again, you may have one that your body normally goes to, or you may just have a part of your brain that just picks one out of the blue to decide how to respond to either a true threat or an imagined threat. The alarm system, a fire alarm in a home, is the metaphor Kathleen Smith uses that I find very helpful. Your alarm can be sensitive, moderately sensitive, or if the batteries are running low, it can be pretty relaxed. So your alarm system in your body and mind and soul gets set during usually the first 20 years of your life. And many people think even just the first 5 or just the first 10. By watching people carefully, especially when you're young and dependent on others for survival, you watch carefully to find out how to survive. You learn from others, and you have your own instinctual genetic makeup that tells you how scared you're going to be when the alarm goes off. So let's have an example. The fire alarms in many people's apartments never go off. There might be an alarm system in the building that has gone off once in a while. In my building once, it was someone had overpacked the laundry machine. So the building's alarm system knew there was a problem and went off. And we could all hear it. And off we went, and fire department fixed everything. The one that's in my apartment, though, it only goes off when I'm cooking. And by cooking, I mean making toast. I can set off a fire alarm by thinking about toasting an Eggo waffle. It's like my alarm system is finely tuned to that wisp of smoke that is short, sweet, and it sets off the alarm. So the alarm that goes off when I'm toasting toast and I am not in any danger because I'm supervising the toaster because I know I'll burn it. And the alarm that goes off that says there is a fire, you have to get up and run. They make the same sound. The fire alarm makes the same sound, and how I react to the alarm is set in me quite early in life. Some people hear an alarm and think, who's toasting something? I should go check. Others hear an alarm and think, the building is on fire, I am going to die, and they begin to flee. And most of us have responded in one or the other way. And there is a large continuum about where you sit in that. On a good, restful day, you might be good at hearing an alarm and thinking of all the possibilities it could mean, dangerous and not, and getting up to investigate. Getting ready to flee or fight the fire, but not yet moving into one of our F words. On a very, very stressful day, when there is a world pandemic going on and you might run out of food, when you hear an alarm, you may be more likely to think the world is on fire and to immediately freeze, flee, or seek out the nearest fire extinguisher before ever investigating what is going on. These are normal reactions. Most of our lives, though, are lived in a normal. We are either living somewhere like a war-torn country where our alarm system is on very high alert because there are real threats. There's others of us who are living in apartment buildings like me who know that fire alarms usually mean toast, and our alarm system is a little less sensitive. You will have a normal. That normal will shift in your lifetime, like during pandemic season, but you will have a normal range. Now, Kathleen Smith is not saying that you can get rid of your alarm system. Our alarm system was made for good reasons. Your anxiety is your alarm system. It is a constant companion in your life. It waits. It frets. It tells you to freeze or flee or fight. Our alarm systems vary in sensitivity based on your experiences and your current context. Anxiety makes us feel uncomfortable. Job is one of our characters in the Bible who goes under great threat. His family dies, his farm animals die. Thus, both his personal and economic systems of support are gone. And then he gets sick. His alarm system is telling him to flee or freeze or fight, fret. And Job chooses mostly to fret and think, and then to talk to God. Job's friends come to sit with him. They come because it is expected in their religion to care for one another, and they've known Job for years. They sit with him, and Job says, "Cursed be God and the day I was born." This is such a horrible experience. It is making me question God and making me question my belief that bad things only happen to bad people. I've reviewed my life. I am not a bad person, at least not this bad. I think God has messed up, and I am in distress. Job is past anxiety. He is now in the grief and lamentation, coming forward into the depression aspects of grief. He's questioning God, and he's expressing deep emotions. His friends begin to feel anxious. One of them begins to feel anxious because Job has so many feelings, and he's just pouring them out willy-nilly, and is reminding him of all of his feelings about life, his love and fears for his family and business. And he's been pushing those down for so long. And Job is just sending him wave after wave of emotion. And instead of letting those waves flow over him and pass because they are not what he's feeling, instead of getting in touch with what he truly is feeling, which is fear for Job and for his own family, and sad that his friend is sad. Maybe a bit energized to try and help Job. Instead of letting all of that happen, he starts to feel his feelings, and they're really uncomfortable. And so he says, "Oh, Job, there is an explanation for this. You did something wrong. Stop with all of these feelings." His friend, feeling anxiety, blames Job for his anxiety and asks Job to just stop. Stop expressing all of this stuff so that I can be more comfortable. Have a beer, Job. Let's dampen our feelings and push them down. Now, another one of the friends is also feeling great anxiety because his whole life is based on a very black and white view of the world. There are good people and bad people, and that's the only kind of people there is. There is God who loves good people, and then there are bad people who have no God to love them. And then the worst thing is that when good people become bad, God punishes them because there's only two things, good and bad. God's way, nothing else. And he has based everything on that black and white fundamentalist view. And I use fundamentalist meaning everything has an exactly right answer that can be found, sought out, and lived out. In his anxiety, this friend begins to tell Job why Job must have messed up. Job's being punished. He must have messed up. And so he says, Job, look deep into your heart, look deep into your life. You have messed up. You have caused this. Now, the third friend is also a theologian, And boy, oh boy, he also wants Job to look at his own behavior. We're not sure why that friend was anxious. He might have been feeling anxious because he was pretty sure he wasn't a good person. And he was feeling like, why did this happen to Job and not me? But that would take self reflection, which raises our anxieties, which raises discomfort, and we want to get away from that. He asks Job to flee into abstract concepts about God and life. Job could take on all of his friends' anxieties as well, but he stays true to how he is feeling. His definition of God isn't fitting his experience. And yet, God has been listening to him. He knows that. So if God is still listening to him, his ideas about God need to be rearranged. God needs to become bigger. Big enough to take all of our feelings, big enough to be bigger than just black and white, big enough to take our true sins and guilts and put them in a mix with our good qualities and forgive and love us anyways. Often we are like Job's friends. We encounter people or places that raise a response in us. We become uncomfortable, discomforted, fearful, and we think that it is a threat. Their anxiety is a threat. Their fear of something is our threat. Their sadness is a threat. And we immediately go into sometimes our instinctual behavior. We freeze. That's when we stop calling someone who's going through a hard time because we don't know what to say. It's a very human thing to freeze. Sometimes we flee. We reject that our friend is dying of cancer and go looking for a miracle cure. Sometimes we fight. Job's friends begin a debate with him so that they can engage in something other than what he's going through, other than the compassion and pain and empathy. And they fret. They really try and fix Job by helping Job realize that he must be a bad person because bad things are happening to him. They freeze and fret. They flee, they fight. These are the things we do too. When something around us feels threatening, it can be a real threat. We hear a cancer diagnosis for someone we love. It can be a real threat. We find out how contagious COVID-19 is. How do you react? And how's that been going for you? I'm going to give you some ideas. And then, as I said, I'm going to send you away with the homework of keeping notes. Keeping notes about when is it that you hear the fire alarm and that you react as if the building is on fire. Even though it may be, and it may not be, but just note when you go from I'm okay to I'm anxious. Find out what you, as you make this list, some of the things you may realize is that feeling, that reactivity or reaction comes at particular times of the day. It's like your alarm is okay and cool for the first half of the day, and then it ramps up. How does checking social media help or not help the level of your alarm? When is it that you are in conversation with people and you begin to feel a tightness, an anxiety response in your body? Now remember, we're not asking why or whose fault. Later, we will talk a little bit about what to do, but the most important thing is to notice. And you're going to get a gold star, however you treat yourself, for making a list this week. It doesn't matter if it's long or short. And of course, it doesn't matter if you miss a few. No one's judging you, but you are invited to notice. When is it that I flee, freeze, fret? When is it that I jump to fight before I've even looked both ways? Next time we get together, we're going to look at some of the ways Job engaged with God in conversation. What are the ways that Job didn't take on his friends' agendas to tampen his feelings, or fight it out, or to fundamentalist it out, meaning to find the right and the wrong? What are some of the ways that Job just kept true to how he was feeling and how he wanted to respond rather than reacting? What are some tools we can use to do that? Take note this week.